There are so many things in the world, in the universe, which are incomprehensible. Something originated somewhere. What was that core? What was that kernel which set things going?
What it comes down to is how you choose to look at the world. If I choose to see it invested with meaning, then it leads me possibly to the idea that behind the meaning is God.
There are situations in life that assert, not in the conventional sense, asserts the existence of the divine.
When one tries to really get at reality, it becomes a lot more difficult than just throwing a scientific experiment at something or just doing a meditation. The problem is that in our everyday reality, where things are felt to be very real and very vivid, we have very little question that it is real. If we have a dream at night, no matter how real it is, when we wake up, we say, that was a dream, this is our reality, this is where I know things, everything's clear here. The problem is, or I shouldn't say the problem, but the difficult issue comes from when you begin to analyze people's experiences that are mystical. When people have these very profound spiritual states that they have, they describe them as being more fundamentally real than our everyday reality kind of experiences.
I think every person has an innate, inherent understanding that there is a God, but we can paper it over very easily. So what is a choice is confronting it, accepting it, acting upon it. That's a choice. But the initial having of it, I think every child recognizes it.
I think God is central to classical Judaism. I think that since the Enlightenment, Judaism, in many of its sectors, made fundamental moves in which the emphasis shifts to ethics, to peoplehood, to messianism without Messiah. That is, history has a purpose, but it doesn't have to be seen in one being or something. And therefore, there are an awful lot of Jews for whom it's not central.
I think the Jewish tradition is very clear on this, that you can command behaviors, you can't command feelings or beliefs.
That's why He created us, so that we would be involved in a closeness in a relationship. And if you don't know that you're living with somebody, it's hard to have any sort of intimacy with them.
You have to try to believe in them. It's the Hasidic Rebbe who says, ואהבת את השם אלוקיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך, הלוואי, הלוואי.
Monotheism, as I read it, is the result of a process of combination. It wasn't that the multiplicity of earlier religious beliefs was set aside in favor of a new idea. It was rather that all of those old ideas were combined, so that whatever had seemed divine was now attributed to one being who was eventually and clearly declared to be the only being.
The notion of God in Judaism has always been something in flux. It's never only been just one thing. And every generation and every era, Jews have had to figure out what's their relationship with this God given their current circumstance.
The God that I believe in on Rosh Hashanah is the judge, which is not the God of Hanukkah. The God of Hanukkah is the God of the protector, the God who wages war on behalf of the Jewish people. And which is not the God that I believe in when I'm sitting Shiva. When I'm sitting Shiva for my parents, this God is a very consoling presence to me. And when I'm dancing at my daughter's wedding, this is a God who celebrates with me.
The God I don't believe in is the God who referred to by ordinary language. It's a creator, manager with overwhelming power.
The word evil connotes the radical, an ontological event, not a displeasing event. To call something evil they're perforce announcing the presence of God.
Reality is that evil is a social construct. If I say evil is a social construct, I don't need any God for that.
The only way for there to be good in this world is if you don't know what's going to happen to you. Therefore, good and evil must be randomly distributed in the world. Otherwise, there's no good.
You always talk as if God is outside of the earthquake. If the tectonic plates are shifting, this means they're shifting in God. Okay? If people are suffering, it means that God in those people is suffering.
The Zohar is very clear about this. There is a sitra achra, there's a kind of shadow side to God. And every once in a while, the shadow side of God gains the upper hand. And when that happens, destruction follows in the world, as the Zohar says.
Not everything that happens in the world happens because God wants it to. Where did we ever get the idea that we were adding to God's glory by saying that every deformed and retarded child, every heart attack, every malignant tumor, every automobile accident, every plane crash, every flood, fire, and earthquake, every war casualty was the will of God? Why would we be expected to admire and worship a God who could do that?
He wants a good God, somebody like your lame Zayde. I didn't have a lame Zayde, but some people had lame Zaydes. Doddering old guys, well-meaning but incompetent.
If you can't cry out to God simply because of the suffering that God allows to be there, then you are letting God off the hook.
The more you blame God for things that go bad, the less effective you'll be, I think, in your life.
I think that that's an easy out. To say, oh yes, you know, God is just, you just don't get it. Well, if I don't get it, then God should explain it to me.
But when you have between 1 million and 1.5 million Jewish children who were murdered during the Holocaust, it becomes a rather strong argument. And of course, if there were a God, then he would be responsible for their killing. So he's not a God, he's a Satan. I'm quite sure that there's no Satan, and therefore there's no God.
Part of what it means to be a human being is to wrestle with these issues, is to wonder, what is God? Where is God? Who is God? Why does God work the way that God works? And so on and so forth.
The interesting thing is that although we all have different conceptions, nevertheless so many people do believe that there is something, you know. Perhaps that's the greatness of God.
It is asked by the rabbis if there are 600,000 Jews at the foot of Sinai, how is it that it says, I am the Lord your God, not you all, but individually? And the answer that Rabbi Levi gives, it is because God is a mirror. And everybody who looks into the mirror, a portion of his reflection is to be found there.